get it in. So you're talking about different genres. A movie that did really well, and we'll talk about the numbers and stuff a little later. But a movie that did really well on the streaming services is Wonder Woman 1984. And for people who might not know what that's about, it's about Wonder Woman. I watched the Linda Carter stuff. So what
Yes.
can I what can I say? What can I
Yes.
say? So before I really talk about this movie, I have to say is that I really like what Patty Jenkins did with the first movie. It worked for me. It was interesting. I saw it on the big screen, and it really worked for me. And a lot of times, what I try not to do is compare movies. I believe that films have to be able to stand on their own, even if they're sequel or whatever.
100%. 100%
I
agree.
but I can't lie to you guys. I was comparing. I I don't know what was there for me, but I was comparing. I was like, is this was the action as good? Was the story as good? Was it as interesting? And I like Gal Gadot. I do. I'm talking about as Wonder Woman. I like her as Wonder Woman, and I was really looking forward to this. But I'm gonna tell you, you guys, the story for me just didn't keep me um, engaged. As I was watching this and going through it, I don't fall asleep on most movies, and I actually did a little snooze for a minute. Had to say, "Oh, wait, what happened? Okay, run that back." I don't know whether it was if it's a woman's sensibility in the way in which they wrote this and brought this to the big screen as a superhero movie, but for me, it just didn't have the pizzazz, the pow, the wow that I would want from a superhero movie. There was nothing wrong with it. It was fine. I didn't feel like I wasted my time, but I also didn't feel like I walked away like, whoa, they really killed this movie. And a couple of things for me that stood out is that the villains for me, and there was two in here, the villains for me didn't come out to me to be these super villains, these villains that really were going to provide her with something to go up against. And I think that they gave one of those villains not enough to go off of. And so this was just an okay film for me. Akatia?
Ooh, I'm. This movie was boring. That is like, we're talking. Why do we watch these movies? For the action. It took an hour before Wonder Woman did Wonder Woman things. Like, also, I was so disappointed that they didn't do more with this 80s theme. I mean, in the beginning, you thought we were going to get that when you had the mall, the arcade, all the things that I grew up with, the whole look, you know what I mean? And even, accentuating the ridiculousness and how we dressed in the 80s. But then it went wah, 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 wah. It just went really flat, again, we were sucked in the first 5 minutes when they were in the Amazonians, and we were like, yay, because that is, but I don't know what this was supposed to be. I mean, I don't know what the intent was, but the execution was off. I agree with you. The other thing we watch these things for, because we want to see the adversaries, the villain and the superhero. And again, that was very confusing. It was not very clear. You have such amazing talent in Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal, and you are not using these folks. And it just was so underwhelming. Do you know what I mean? I watched this
Yeah.
with my family, and my daughter was like, "Oh, this is a mess." That's basically what she said, right? And I was just like, yeah, you just like, but she looked cute. And also, there was no purpose for Chris Pine to be in this movie, like other than the
That's
fact,
funny. My
right?
my, my
Like they
daughter.
had they had such chemistry in the first one, and in this one, it was like forced. They were trying to, and I was like, Chris did not need to be in this movie.
My
I just,
daughter.
I'm confused. What was the purpose of this?
My daughter agreed with you on the Chris thing, but I have to say that Sean, one of the things you talk about a lot is respect the demo. So I was trying to figure out who's the demo. So what I did is I convened a panel of some young folks, and we had a discussion. And only one of the young folks in my panel really liked it. The rest of them were like, "Nah, this didn't work either." And I'm gonna give him a shout out. That's my nephew Matthew. He thought that this was better than the first one. and I am still looking at him sideways. So, Sean, you respect the demo?
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, and that's a great point. Another thing that we talked about a lot last year in 2020 is what effect is the pandemic having on our critical viewpoint, even as professionals or from the consumer standpoint. And I think this movie probably would have fared far worse if it hadn't been a pandemic, because I think people were so thirsty to finally see like a legitimate big studio blockbuster tentpole finally be released, that they were a lot less forgiving on this movie than they probably would have been if this would have been released under normal circumstances. The problem I have is the problem I have with a lot of directors who get assigned their opportunity to direct a comic book movie. These directors, they act like pimps who want to run an online dating service. Just do what pimps do. Drive a fancy car, wear crazy clothing, and get your money. You know, they're trying to do other stuff. And that's why this doesn't work. Just pick up a comic book and mimic what happens in comic books. They're trying to stuff too much into these movies where look, introduce the superhero, put the superhero in peril, have the superhero fight the villain, copy, paste, and do it again. Yeah, it's just like when they were doing those Hulk movies. Like, you just want to see David Banner get mad, turn green, and beat people up. That's all you got to do. That's all.
We're not looking for a deep meaning,
right? That's
Wonder Woman.
And I'm
for her to solve COVID.
Right, and I 100% agree with Katya said about the backdrop of calling this movie Wonder Woman 1984. I mean, if you're gonna make the setting the 80s, there's so much. Even if you want to go the satirical route, if you want to go the analytical route, I mean, just that year, if you remember what all was going on in 1984, my God,
the Olympics.
How do you 1984 is the greatest year ever in the history of pop music. Like, how do you what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm feeling you, Sean, and I'm so glad you guys brought up a couple of things. I know we don't want to talk about this too much longer, but
no,
but that first scene, the first scene where they were doing the Olympics and that type of thing, that was interesting to me. And then they go to some I'm talking about some crazy robbery where the stuff that the robbers did, I knew it was going downhill from there because the stuff that the robbers did. So they run out of the place with the bags, give it to two other guys, and they all four get caught. Heck no. Come on, we know from the hood that wouldn't happen. I would have left y'all. I would have took my bag and I would have gone. It was just too much, man.
Well, the biggest flaw is the movie lacked unpredictability. It was just too predictable. That's all. It's not a horrible movie. It's just a slightly disappointing movie because
it's underwhelming.
It's so much they could have. There's so much they could have done. I mean, there was so much you could have.
I agree with Sean though. This is one of the times where if you had already been paying for HBO Max, you're like, oh, thank God, this would have stuck me for $60 or $80. You know what I mean? At least I only paid my $20 a month, whatever it is. But
yeah,
by the time you better pay for popcorn and some places parking, I would have been at $100 for this. Oh no, fam.
Yeah, I'm like, watch it because it is at home. We're talking about pandemic. You can watch it at home, but don't think that you're gonna walk away from this that wow, this was a great film. Sean, watch it.
We're gonna talk about it later. It did solid numbers in movie theaters, though.
It did.
So,
yeah.
Sean, watch it.
Oh man, this is a tricky one when you only have two options of not watch or watch. I mean, because it doesn't. We're not really saying a lot. I mean,
that's right.
I mean, sure, watch it, but like I said, it's not horrible, but it's not great. But I wouldn't say not watch it.
Okay, Katya, watch it.
This one's tricky.
If you're at home, you got HBO Max. Yeah. Is it worth getting in the car for and getting masked up for and all that? No.
That's no movie worth it.